Okay. What is your last name, and then can you spell it?
McGrail, McGrail.
And then what's your first name and middle initial?
Charles J.
Okay. What year were you born?
1963.
Where did you live when you became part of the military?
Jefferson City, Missouri.
What branch of service were you part of?
United States Marine Corps.
How did you get in the service? Were you volunteered or drafted?
I volunteered. I was actually cutting grass with for the city, and ran into two. They were upperclassmates that had graduated. They both played football for Helias. I kept stats, and was cutting grass. They ran into me. They were like, "Oh, come on, let's all three go in the Marine Corps together." Next thing I know, I'm down at the recruiter's office. I signed the papers. Went home and told my parents, "Hey, I leave in 20 days." So I had 20 days from the day I signed papers to the day I left. So.
When did you first start the service?
September 1982.
How old were you?
18.
18. Why did you volunteer?
I had originally thought of going into the service. I had 4 uncles, and each one was in a different branch of the service. But was going to go to school at Lincoln for a little bit, at Lincoln University. And then they talked me into it, and we all three went together. So it was just kind of something to do. Back when I was growing up, there wasn't much to do. You know, cruise up and down the boulevard. The boulevard stopped where Kmart was. So the mall and everything past that, there wasn't anything there. So you would drive around McDonald's, go through Hardee's, what's now Chipotle, then drive up the boulevard, go through Kmart's Plaza, go through Burger King, and then back down. And that's what you did on Friday and Saturday nights.
Was it ever difficult to tell your parents whenever you came home that day that you volunteered?
No. My dad was kind of excited because I had just wrecked 2 cars within 5 months. My mom was worried because she's like, well, what about school? I went to the recruiter, I went to the dean at Lincoln University and was able to get my money back. The dean said, we usually don't do this, but since you volunteered for the service, we'll give you your money back.
And then, where was basic?
San Diego, California, MCRD.
Or were you sent after basic for advanced training?
After MCRD, which is Marine Corps Recruit Depot in San Diego, I went to Camp Pendleton to School of the Infantry. So I graduated 3 days after my birthday, and then came home, was home on leave until January. Then went back out to California and went to infantry training school.
What was your job when you began military service?
I was in the infantry. So my original orders, after boot camp, and you go to School of the Infantry, they read out your orders, what's your MOS, which is your military occupational skill. They read those out and where you're going to go. When I got mine, my original order was to go to 3rd Marine Division, which is in Okinawa, Japan. But during boot camp, there was an incident where a young lady was raped while we were on guard duty, my buddy and we were able to report it. And so when I had to go back down to Camp Pendleton to testify, so after my infantry training school, I got a driver and a van, and we went down, and I had to testify and sent a Marine to Fort Leavenworth for raping this girl.
Where did you begin military service after advanced training?
I was stationed at Camp Pendleton with the 1st Marine Division. It's a small, Camp Pendleton is like 73 square miles, and it has different little camps on the base on Camp Pendleton, and I was stationed at San Mateo.
What was happening in the world when you were in the military?
Let's see, well, the unit I joined, after my school, we were getting ready to deploy to Okinawa, Japan for 6 months. So we're in, getting ready to leave in October of 1983, and that's when they had the bombing in Beirut. So we actually landed in Japan, stayed on the airfield, and they started passing out live ammunition because we were the most qualified Marine unit close to Lebanon to go into Beirut if we had to.
How long did you serve in the military?
I did 8 years active duty and 12 years in the reserves.
What was the reason for you to get out?
When I got off active duty, it was because my son was young and I hadn't seen him very long. When you're in the infantry, you train for 6 months, so Monday through sometimes Thursday, sometimes Friday, you're out in the field training, doing patrolling, land navigation, things like that. So you'd only have the weekends off. So you train for 6 months, then you're gone for 6 months to overseas, and then when you come back, you spend kind of 6 months where you're on downtime, where you do camp maintenance or you do guard duty, and then that cycle starts over again. So my son was young, and so decided to get off active duty, but wanted to stay in. So I joined the reserves, and when I joined the reserves, I went to an artillery unit out in Los Angeles. So I have 2 MOSs. I have an infantry MOS, which is 0311, and I have an intel, which is military intelligence, which is a 0231. So I would help artillery. We would look at the way the enemy's going to come to shoot the artillery pieces. And when I was in the reserves, I was an intel officer with the artillery unit and with the Navy Seabees.
If you served during time of war, what engagements can you
I was in Operation Iraqi Freedom. I was in Iraq from August of 2005 till April of 2006. And I served with the 30th Naval Construction Regiment, which is a CB unit, and was the intel chief. I had a lieutenant colonel that I worked for, but we would do all the briefs for any of the convoys that were going out, or for any of the dignitaries that came in. We always had dignitaries coming into Iraq. So we were up at Camp Fallujah after the initial Gulf War. We were in Fallujah there with artillery and the Navy Seabees all in one compound.
What do you remember most about your time in service?
Just meeting different people from all over the United States. I mean, I regret that I didn't stay in more contact with them and everything like that, because you form a good friendship and everything like that. But yeah, if I had to do it over again, of course I would do it again. So just being able to travel, you know, a young kid from Missouri to go to Japan, Korea, Thailand, the Philippines, you know, where else could you get that experience, you know?
What qualities did you believe you carried from the military to where you are today?
The core values of the Marine Corps: honor, courage, and commitment. So those are the core values of the Marine Corps, and I still try to live up to those every day.
What are your most enduring memories of your time in service?
Most enduring. There's so many. I mean, you know, when we were in Korea, we helped an orphanage get their Christmas presents. I had a little Korean boy that I took care of, you know, got him a coat and everything like that, where if we didn't help out that orphanage, they probably wouldn't have had anything. Being in Iraq, you know, the dignitaries that came over, not just state dignitaries. I mean, we had the Secretary of State come over, and I did the brief in front of him. So it's the chance of getting exposure and meeting other people from all different walks of life.
Do you ever get back together with the people you served with?
Yes, one of my friends that we were in the reserves together, we're best friends. He still lives out in California, and we talk all the time, and I'm able to, my older son lives out there, so whenever I go out there to see my son, I make sure I go and see my buddy, so.
Will you please describe it?
Sure. This is money from Iraq. So pictures of Saddam Hussein on them and everything like that. Really couldn't tell you the amounts of them anymore. It's been so long, but he was on everything that was over there. So that's how big of an influence Saddam Hussein had.
Who's this man right there?
He's probably one of the Shiite, they're kind of like the priest for different villages. So, then these are different soda cans. So this one is Mountain Dew, and then it's Mountain Dew written in Iraq. And then it even has, like the ingredients are in there. A Coke one, and then Sprite.
Do they taste the same? Like
Yeah, they tasted the same. And then these are different challenge coins. Each unit has a challenge coin, just for the camaraderie and things like that. So this one's from the 30th NCR that I helped design. So it has the Navy CB with the 30th Marine or Naval Construction Regiment, and then the map of Iraq on it. This one has Woody Wilson, who was a Medal of Honor winner and threw out the coin at the Super Bowl. Silent Drill Team 1, they were here in 2006 and performed, and then we were able to take those young men out to the Marine Corps League barracks here in town and provide them with a dinner afterwards. They did come out and we use M1 grands like they use for our funeral details. Theirs are a little bit lighter than ours because they don't have the full mechanisms, and they tried to toss ours like they tossed theirs and dropped one of ours and cracked one of our stocks on one of our rifles. This one's from the commandant, past commandant of the Marine Corps League. His name was Vic Valtaggio, but he was also a National League umpire for a number of years. So that's what I'm talking about. You get to meet so many different people. This one is the Samuel F. Gearhart Detachment, and then we also have our Devil Dogs, which the Devil Dogs for the Marine Corps League is the Fun and Honor Society. So here in Jeff City, we do all the barbecues up at Schulte's. We do 4 or 5 a year. We do Toys for Tots. We have a charity fund that we help out with scholarships or things like that, project graduation, project prom. And then this one's the new one for the Samuel F. Gearhart Detachment that was made up this year. Has our name on it, and then on the back, Semper Fi, which stands for Semper Fidelis, which is Latin for always faithful. This one is the Marine Corps Military Advisors, 1st Naval Construction Regiment, who I was attached to. And then on the back is the CBs that we help to be the instructors for. My last 8 years in the reserves was with the Navy CBs, so it's a kind of a B billet. So a B billet in the Marine Corps is either recruiting or the drill field, but as a reservist, it's really hard to get a B billet because it's kind of a special duty. So there was a lieutenant colonel, a major, my buddies that's a master gunnery sergeant, and myself. We would go to California twice a year, and we would teach naval engineer officers how to be Marines, because you never know when you're going to end up in a place like Iraq or Afghanistan, so they need to understand some of the basic stuff. So patrolling, land navigation, communications, how to set up an entry control point to keep their camp safe. So we would do that. We'd spend a week in the classrooms at Port Hueneme, California, and then we would take them up to Northern California to a base called Hunter Liggett, and they would have to apply what we taught them in the class into the field. So as a staff sergeant, a non-commissioned officer, to tell a lieutenant, you know, sir, you're not digging your hole properly, or sir, you need to go over here. It was a great experience, you know, to make sure that these young officers, you know, that are very smart as far as mechanical engineering or any kind of engineer, that they understand how important it is to always carry their rifle with them when they're out in the field and things like that. So that's pretty much everything about me.
All right. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Are you guys good?
Yeah.